Welcome back to the Nonsense, where we make some sense out of the nonsense. We're in John chapter 10. Been really hitting this point because it's important. You know, for us to survive in this life and our eternal struggle with the enemy, we need to know our shepherd. We need to know his voice. We need to make sure that we respond to the good shepherd, the right shepherd, the one who calls us by name. Hey, you is not our shepherd. All of you is not our shepherd. The one who says Andy, the one who says whatever your name is, that's your shepherd. We want to make sure that when he comes to the door and he calls, that we answer, that we let him lead us, and that we follow him, right? Look at verse 5 with me in chapter 10 of John. It says, "A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." You understand this. Too many of the sheep in the sheepfold do not know the voice of Jesus. They will follow strangers. They have followed strangers. They are following strangers. Sounds like Jesus, got some of Jesus in them, maybe even. But if you really looked at them, they're not really Jesus. They're another shepherd. Notice that's the whole idea. Other shepherds have their sheep in the fold. Sitting at church with you on a Sunday basis, there are other shepherds. There are people who are following Jesus. They would respond to Jesus. And then there are people who are following the pastor. That's their shepherd. Now, I understand that we call pastors shepherds. But when we talk about the good shepherd, there's only one, and that's Jesus. There are people who, if Jesus walked in and called, they'd be so focused on their pastor, they would not respond. You see, they're not being led to Jesus, they're being led to their pastor. There are other people who are led to their Sunday school teachers, and there are other people who are led to outside other people, the government, the president, right? All of these things. There are all kinds of shepherds within a church. Shouldn't be, absolutely positively shouldn't be. But you know, the gatekeeper could allow for those who are worshiping their president to come in and take those who are his. The gatekeeper could allow those who are worshiping Sunday school teachers and assistant pastors and pastors and people, they would go with theirs. See, if the pastor said, "Hey, I'm leaving this church and I'm going down the road," they would follow him. They would follow him. But if Jesus walked in the door, he wouldn't even know their name. So again, we look at this and say, God makes this very clear, right? God's sheep know Jesus, and Jesus knows their name. And the real sheep of Jesus, they're not going to follow after, right? Anything but Jesus. Do you know that's where some of the division and some of the strife come in moments within the church? There are moments where people are presenting a non-Jesus shepherding moment. Hey, we need to do this, but it's not of Jesus. Hey, we need to build this, but it's not of Jesus. Hey, we need to hire this, not of Jesus. Sounds good. It's in the sheepfold, but it's not necessarily Jesus. Can you distinguish? Can you go into your church and can you look and you find the things that are Jesus, the things that are of Jesus? If Jesus walked in, could he call to his own? Are you helping that process? Are you helping develop people so that when Jesus calls, they come? Right? That's a super simple truth. Those who are Jesus aren't going to follow anybody but Jesus. Not anybody but Jesus. It is possible that your pastor could be acting like Jesus. That's fantastic. You should follow him. But you should be prepared for when he might not be acting like Jesus. Same thing with your spouses. Same thing with your children. Same thing with your family and your friends and the people in the church. So when people get it right and they're acting like Jesus, then we follow them. Right? If we're under their authority. But the second that the voice isn't Jesus in them, we don't follow. Matter of fact, it says we run away. They scatter. We run away from them. We run away from the things that are not of Jesus. And then Jesus has to come and gather us all back together. It's what he does. He goes out and seeks those who have been scattered, those who have run away. Right? We don't sit there and keep following somebody who's not of Jesus. Now, listen, I know there's a lot of stuff in here. I know there's stuff that people are going to disagree with. I know that there are people who've listened to 2 minutes or 2 seconds and turned it off. I know that there are probably questions. I hope that you would someday ask those questions. I pray that you would not just make nasty comments, right, that I have to delete, because that's not how we drash. But instead, that you would really drash this out. What do you really think? There are people who totally disagree with me. Everybody in the sheepfold is Jesus. Okay. Right? There are people who believe that, listen, you know what? It really doesn't matter who we follow. Right? There are people who think that they understand and they got the voice of Jesus and they're the only one that has the voice of Jesus. People all over the place. I'm looking for the principles and the truth, and can you apply them? Right? Do you know your shepherd? Do you know his voice? Does he know your name? Is he leading you out? Are you able to understand, right, that there are times when the government might get it right, might sound like Jesus, be Jesus, fantastic. But there are times when the government is nowhere near Jesus. And are you still following? I'm not telling you, giving you permission to rise up and create division that way. I'm just saying, do you stop? Do you think? Do you think, is that the voice of Jesus or is that not? And if it's not, are you running away from it? Or are you just hanging around and hoping that it sounds more and more like Jesus and someday it'll be Jesus? Like, Jesus is always Jesus. So lots and lots for you to think about. I hope this has been beneficial to you. We'll see you next week, next time on Nightly Nonsense.